I wrote this poem in 1992. It was shortly before Christmas. Everyone was getting ready for the holidays, but at Fort Lewis, very near to us, the servicemen were not. They were packing. They were hustling and bustling to get flown to Somalia, where they could protect the food convoys, taking food to the people who were starving. And every night on the news, we saw pictures of these little children and some that shouldn't have been that little, who were starving to death, dying daily. And yet people worried about the risk of us being there. Did it weigh like this with helping give results? Risk, results, risk, results. Well, I just knew that every time I watched it on the news, I had to write about it. And I call it Somali Soul Food. A holiday backdrop so painful reminds us that justice is rare. Children too weakened to cry out. Gaunt parents lost in despair. A mother and child paints a picture of seasons so joyful and mild. But famine, pain, and starvation bring tears to the eyes of God's child. So leaving their families behind them, they're off on a mission of hope. Food convoys risk and service in dangerous regions remote. Food's not the core of this issue. It's love and humanity too. The grain will sustain the bodies, but all will find soul food anew. Doing something to quell the hunger will feed all in more ways than one, for spirits are filled up and lifted by doing good deeds left undone. So food is bestowed on the giver as well as those who receive. All souls yearn and hunger for meaning, a purpose in which to believe. Oh God, as you look down upon us, striving to help and to cope, thanks for the true gift of soul food, your message of peace and of hope. I love this. Feed those kids. Love it. And you know, just at one point that later, when I heard that the commanding general of the fort had sent my poem to his troops in the field, and they stood in formation and they read this poem. I was excited that it was on its way. I was excited that the soldiers had been read this poem. In fact, I thought, you know, what would make a general be so thoughtful and sensitive that he realized that he could give added value to the work his people were doing if he would give them this poem. So I got a letter from Colonel Harper. Colonel Harper wrote from Somalia, and he said, I read your poem to the troops in formation. Oh my gosh, you know, lined up in a foreign land, in harm's way, listening to my poem. But again, I thought this wouldn't have happened without a general with a heart for his people. And they shared it in Sunday services. They said people were making copies by hand to send home and to take home for their families. I was really, really touched. Later, I was contacted by the medical teams that were there, and they were taking care of these patients. And they asked me to come and read the poem to their big dinner party that they have in Seattle once a year. So I did. And then there was different people asking questions. One of them said, why do you think that it's worth it that you take this risk and go over there and give them food for a day when you don't know if they will live another month? And they had an answer. They stood tall and said, we give them today so they can have tomorrow. Ooh, you know, imagine doing that with your life, making a difference for people. I mean, none of us know when we touch someone's life, if it's for a day or for a year or for a lifetime. I just was so touched by that. And later, General Cabeza contacted me and asked if I would come to the luncheon at Fort Lewis of the families and read the poem. Again, it was my joy and to shake his hand. His wife was very nice and made me comfortable, but to shake the hand of a general who would send a poem to his troops, I thought, this is my kind of guy. Where do I go from there? I was a happy lady.